In this presentation, we will work a comprehensive problem related to a not-for-profit organization, a non-profit organization, which happens to be a private college. So a private college, not-for-profit organization. The information is going to be on the left side. We're going to put that into the blue area on the right side. Within the blue area, we're going to have the general journal. And then to the right of the general journal, we're going to have a trial balance worksheet where we will be entering the data into the blue area of it. The trial balance worksheet will have a beginning balance, adjustments, and then the ending balance. This will give us a nice kind of quick visual of the activity that will be happening as we post these accounts to the worksheet. The accounts will be in order. The green accounts will be the asset accounts. The orange accounts will be the liability accounts. The light blue accounts is what would be equivalent to the equity accounts in a for-profit type of organization, which would be like retained earnings, if it was a corporation, including retained earnings, at least if it was a corporation, or a capital account for a sole proprietor. Here, it's going to be called, of course, net assets. Net assets. Then under that, we've got what would be similar to the income statement account, those temporary, in a for-profit organization, those temporary accounts, those accounts that would close out in a for-profit organization to equity, to retained earnings, to capital, in our case, to net assets. These are going to be those temporary accounts. Now we're going to scroll back up top, and then once we've completed this, we will do the closing entries down below. Then we'll make some financial statements from this. All right, now let's go back to the left. First thing we're going to do is clean up a little bit of our worksheet. One is that we have two sets of general journals. What we want to do is hide the second set of general journals so that we can work as efficiently as we can. So we're going to do that by putting our cursor on the letter J, then selecting over until we get to the letter N, letting go, right-clicking in that selected area and hiding those cells. So now we have our worksheet on the right, we've got our general journal in the middle, and then we have the transactions or the information that we're going to record on the left side. Number one then says that we have gross tuition and fees. So we're going to record the gross tuition and fees. We're going to record these items in the same journal entry here. Then we have the tuition waivers and scholarships. So this is going to be the tuition waivers and scholarships. Of that number of the tuition waivers and scholarships, the amount for teaching assistantship, and therefore is instruction expense. So we're going to record it to instruction expense is the $292,500. So up top, once again, we have the gross tuition and fees on account. We're going to say on account, and the tuition waivers and scholarships are going to be combined together. Now, we can think of, usually we would record, if they're on account, we haven't got the cash yet, in other words, a receivable, some type of receivable, that's receivable being tuition and fees receivable for us. The credit would typically be to the tuition and fees, some type of revenue kind of account, right? And so we're going to debit then the tuition and fees. So we're going to start up top. We're going to be on number one. Number one is going to be equal to the tuition and fees receivable. And the tuition and fees receivable is going to be equal to, and we're going to say it's got $5,750, which is the total minus the waivers of the $427,000. So we're going to take out the waivers. Now we're not going to record the tuition revenue yet. That's going to be kind of like our last account that we're going to record, but it will be equivalent to that 5750 amount here. Next, we're going to record the tuition waivers and scholarships, and we're going to record that into the tuition and fees discount and allowance account. However, the portion of this 427 that is tuition waivers for the amount for teaching assistantship is going to be going to the account called instruction expense. So we're going to record that to instruction expense. So of this 427, we're going to have $292,500 of it go into instruction expense, and the difference between the two go into tuition and fees discount and allowance. All right, so the second account is going to be equal to, scrolling down, we're going to pick up the tuition and fee discount and allowances. This is going to be kind of like a contra income type of account. So it's going to be a debit balance account acting similar to an expense, but kind of more like a contra income account. And then we're going to record the expense of the instruction expense. So the instruction expense is going to be an expense type of account, instruction expense. Okay, and then we're going to pick up the amount will be equal to the $427,000 minus the $292,500. That's what's going to go into the tuition and fees and allowance, discount and allowances, and then the expense item will be equal to the 292,500. So then the total for the credit, or the credit being the income related type of account, the income type or kind of account, is going to go to tuition and fees without donor restriction. Tuition and fees without donor restriction, that will be then the credit. We are in cell H6, negative sum of these accounts, giving us the 5,750,000. That, of course, equaling this number up top. Okay, so now we're going to record this out. We got the tuition and fees receivable. So up top, we're in tuition and tuition and fees receivable. We are in cell Q5. So within Q5, we're going to say equals. Scroll to the left and pick up that first debit amount. Next, we have the tuition and fees discounts and allowances. Tuition and fees discount and allowances. That's going to be down here in Q14. So within Q14, we're going to say equals and scroll back over. Scroll back up and we're going to pick up the tuition and fees discount and allowance number. So that, again, going up with a debit direction, kind of like a contra revenue account. And then we're going to go to the instruction expense. Scrolling back down, finding the instruction expense. That's going to be in cell Q21, where we will say equals. Scroll back up and pick up the instruction expense of the 292,500. And then finally, we've got the tuition and fees without restriction. Tuition and fees without the donor restriction. That's going to be in cell Q13. Within cell Q13, we're going to say equals and scroll over and pick up that credit of the 5,750,000. There we have it. We're going to scroll back down, see if we are in balance with the green zeros. We have green zeros indicating we are indeed in balance. And therefore, we're going to scroll back over and we're going to go to number 2. Now, as we go to the second one, I'm going to start making them green as we start to work on them so that we know which one we're working on. Number 2 then says that we have tuition refunds. So tuition refunds, so we're going to say this is going to be number 2. Now we're going to say that we're going to refund this money and it's basically on account, meaning it's in the receivable, and now we're going to basically have a refund of it. Therefore, the receivable needs to go down. So we have the tuition and fees receivable over here. It has a debit balance. It needs to go down. We're going to put it on the bottom then, saying tuition and receivables here needs to be decreasing. And then we're going to have, I'll pick up the number now, which is going to be the 109,700. The debit is going to be for the same amount. Now the other side is going to be reversing then the tuition and fees without donor restrictions. So we're going to take it straight to kind of like the income statement type of account here. We're not going to create like another type of account. We're going to be reversing it straight to the income type of account for the refund that we have. So and if it was a for-profit, you might think a similar transaction would be like in returns and allowances type of transaction, where we create another kind of contra income type of account. Here we're actually reversing the income account, which might be a little bit different than you may be used to. So we're going to pick up then the tuition fees without donor restrictions, and there's our transaction. Let's go ahead and post that one out. Tuition and fees up top, it's going to be in Q13. I'm going to use the keyboard now to go in here. So I'm going to say F2 plus F2, and then scroll over and pick up that 109,770 and enter. So that brings that balance down. Then we're going to scroll over to the tuition and fees receivable. Tuition and fees receivable is going to be up top. We are in cell Q5. Something's in it, so I'm going to go into it. I'm going to do that with the keyboard this time by selecting F2 plus F2. Then scrolling over to the 109,770. So there we have that. Now we're going to go back over and see let's see if we're in balance first. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's check the double zeros down here. The green zeros down below would indicate we are indeed in balance. That's good. We can move forward. We're going to ungreen number 2 because that has been completed, and we are going to green up number 3, the one we will be completing this time. Number 3 says that we have unrestricted private gifts, and then we have the cash restricted for grants, and then we're going to have securities for endowment. So we're going to record all these in a transaction for number 3. You could probably break them out or think them out as individual transactions as well. We're going to start off with cash. We're going to scroll up top and pick up the cash amount. I'm going to put that up top, but it's going to be our plug number. So we're actually going to do that basically the last thing that we're going to do in this journal entry. The other thing that's going to be a debit within this journal entry, so we're going to do it next, even though it's the bottom item. And I don't, if you don't want to construct this, if you want to construct these types of things in some different order or not have the debits and credits in the right order on top all the time, that's okay. But we're gonna keep with the convention as long as it's relatively easy to do. And then when it becomes too difficult, we will break from convention, put credits on top if we have to, if it makes more sense for us to do so. Okay, so then we're gonna pick up the securities for the endowment. So these are securities that were given to us, and therefore we're going to have to record the investment for the securities, and then we're going to have a contribution, which will be kind of like the income side of things. So the debit, the increase in account, rather than being cash, is going to be some type of investment. So we're going to put it into investments. It's going to be the debit side, again, the credit, some kind of revenue kind of account that we're going to have on the credit. Now we'll think about the credit side of things. We have unrestricted private gifts that were given to us. So unrestricted private gifts, that's going to be a kind of revenue that's happening. So I'm going to say this is going to be equal to contributions, and they're unrestricted, and therefore they have no restrictions. Contributions without restrictions. This is going to be a credit. So I'm going to say negative of this number. The investments is going to be this number. And then a cash is going to be our plug. So we're going to do that last. And then we got cash restricted for grants. So now we've got cash restricted for grants. That's going to be another type of contribution, but it will be restricted. So we're going to go over here and we're going to say that's another kind of contributions, but it has a restriction, that restriction related to grants. The amount then we're going to say is on the credit side of things at the $579,200. Then we have the contributions, the securities for the endowment. And that's going to be a kind of contribution as well. Once again, a restricted one, typically for an endowment. So we're going to make that into a contribution. We'll make a separate account to label the types of restrictions, in this case, due to endowment. So there's the contribution for the endowment, the revenue kind of account related to it. It will be a credit. And then I'm going to make the debit, which is going to be the negative sum, the plug formula. So notice these two kind of cancel out here, of course. And these two are the cash items at the $2,487,200. That's what the debit in essence will be, or will be without any essence. And okay, so we're going to say negative sum. This is our plug formula. We're going to sum everything up and then flip the sign, and we've got that $2,487,200. Now we can post this one out. We're going to start off with cash. Cash will, of course, be up top. That's going to be our top account, our favorite account. We're in Q3. Within Q3, we're going to say equals and scroll over to that $2,487,200. Then we have investments. So investments is going to be our second account. We're in cell Q4. Within Q4, we're going to say equals. Scroll down to the $1,401,000. And next we have the contributions without donor restrictions. That's going to be down below. Here's the contributions without donor restrictions. We are in cell Q15. Within Q15, we're going to say equals, point to that $1,908,000. Next, we've got the contributions with donor restrictions with relation to grants. So here's that account. We are in cell Q16, equals that $579,200. Next, we've got contributions with donor restrictions, endowment. So we are then down here in the endowment. That's going to be in cell Q18, equals, and we'll scroll over to that $1,401,000. There we have that. So let's see if we are in balance down below. If we scroll down below, we got the green zeros indicating that we are in balance. So that looks good. We're going to scroll back to the left. We're going to scroll back up. We're going to ungreen number 3 and right click and ungreen number 3. And then we'll green up number 4. That's the one we are on. So I'm going to make that one green. Then I'm going to add a number 4 over to the right side, and because that's where we're going to enter the journal entry. And number 4 says we have pledges of $1,892,000. Now a pledge is of course going to be a type of receivable. We haven't got the money yet, therefore it's going to be a type of receivable. The amount of pledges for construction campaign is going to be this amount, so those are going to be some type of restriction. So the amount of this number that was pledged had a restriction. Normally we would think of the restriction given when they give the pledge. So they're going to say, hey, there's this construction project that I want to donate to specifically. So there we have that. Amount of pledges for endowments. So then we have the pledge related to an endowment. Again, that's going to be somewhat restricted. And then the remainder, the pledges total minus those two restrictions, are going to be then unrestricted or not have a specific restriction on it. However, the fact that they're still pledges mean that we haven't yet got the money. So although we're going to record revenue, we still will record them restriction with regard to time. So they're going to be recorded restriction. All of them will be restricted. It's just that one's going to be further restricted, or two of them will be further restricted with regards to the construction, the endowment, and then the other will be due to time, given the fact we have not yet received it. All right, let's record this out. We're going to start off with the receivable then. We're going to scroll over and pick up the accounts receivable up top. We're going to scroll up top. We're going to pick up the pledges receivable. Pledges receivable. That's going to be the debit for the amount of the $1,892,000, $1,892,000. Then we're going to say that we have the contributions. These are going to be some type of or form of revenue. The contribution, the first contribution is restricted by the construction project. So I'm going to say equals, scroll to the right, and we're going to have the contributions related to the capital. We're going to call it a capital campaign. So the capital campaign, and that is going to be a credit. It's kind of like an income statement, an income revenue type of account. So I'm going to say negative of the 613,400. There we have that. Next, we have the amount of pledges for the endowment. So the amount of the pledges for the endowment, the 540. Let's pick that up. So that's going to be a type of contribution, other kind of revenue account, this time restricted by the endowment. That's going to be on the credit side. We're going to credit it for the 540,200. And then the difference between those two is going to be the amount of or the difference between the 1,892,000 and those two is going to be the amount of contributions that are just restricted just by time, with reference to time. So we're going to pick up that one, the contributions with donor restrictions with regard to time. The amount then is going to be that 1,892,000 minus the 613,400 minus the 542. So let's do that. It's going to be equal to, I'm going to do it with a positive, and then I'll flip the sign on it. So I'm going to say it's going to be equal to this number, and then minus, I could pick them up here, minus those two numbers, or here I could have picked them up. So once again, it's this number minus these two. Now I need to flip the sign to make it a credit. So I'm going to double click on it. I'm going to go to the end of it. I'm going to say negative and control 9, and then at the end control 0, and that'll give us the plug number. And actually, of course, that was kind of silly because we could have used the plug formula. So let's do that. I'm going to delete it. You can keep that, but I'm going to delete it. I'm going to use the sum formula, the negative sum, our plug formula, which is why we designed the journal entry this way, and put it down here. We're going to say negative SUM, and then we'll select those items, and we'll come up with that same 738,400. And of course, the whole thing adds up to debits minus the credits, 0. All right, let's post it. We're going to be up top. We're in the pledges receivable first. So I'm going to go to the right. Going to scroll up top. We're looking for pledges receivable. We are in cell Q7. Within Q7, we're going to say equals and scroll over to the 1,892,000 and enter. So there we have that amount. And then we're going to go to the contributions with donor restrictions with the capital campaign. So we have contributions with donor restrictions. And we have the capital campaign. That's going to be down here. We are in cell Q19. So within Q19, I'm going to say equals. Pull over that 613,400. There we have that up in the credit direction as revenue accounts should go. And then we're going to go to the contributions with restrictions for the endowment. So once again, contributions, we have the restriction this time with relation to the endowment. So we're in Q18. There's something in it. So I'm going to say F2. Plus F2, then scroll over and pick up the 540,200. And then we have the contributions with restrictions, but this time only to time being the only restriction. That's going to be in cell Q17. So within cell Q17, I'm going to say equals. Scroll over to that 738,400 and enter. And there we have that. So if we scroll back down, we see that we are back in balance given by the green zeros. So that looks good. We're good to go. Going to scroll back to the left then. We're going to ungreen the number 4 because it has been completed. And that's nice. So I'm going to make it ungreen to indicate that fact. And then we're going to go to number 5, the current one we are working on. Number 5 then says, I'm going to put number 5 over here in cell E22. We provided goods and services that generated cash. Now, if we provide goods and services, we're basically going to say that those are outside of our typical kind of items that we provide, which is education. And therefore, we're going to put it into some other category on the income. We want to categorize it at some other place, kind of like it's not part of our normal type of operations. We're going to put that into an account called auxiliary enterprises. Auxiliary enterprises. So we're going to get cash. That's where we can start because that's going to be the easy thing to do. We know cash is affected. It's going up. That's what cash does what it does. So that's usually the first place to start. So we're going to say cash is increasing and it's going to go up by that 110,770. Then we're going to have a credit, and that credit is then going to go to our auxiliary enterprises. So that's going to be down here. And we don't want to pick up the expense. This is kind of like a revenue type of account. So we're crediting the revenue type of account. We don't have any donor restrictions on it, so that's going to be there. There's our transaction. Let's post this out. I'm going to scroll back up to the cash up top. Cash up top, of course, has something in it. So I'm going to go to the F2 plus and then F2 and then scroll back down. And we'll pick up that 110,770. And then we have the auxiliary expenses. That's going to, or I'm sorry, enterprises, not expenses. These are not expenses. This is an income similar account. And then we are in Q20 where we will say equals and scroll over to that 110,770. Now let's see if we're back in balance. We do look and seem to be back in balance. That's a good sign that we can move on. We're going to ungreen number 5 then. I'm going to go ahead and ungreen number 5. We're going to move on to number 6, which we will then make green as we do so. We have collections on tuition receivables. So we're going to say number 6, we collected on the receivable. So that means the receivable is going to go down. Cash is going to go up. We got cash, but we earned it in the past. The receivable is what we're earning it on. Receivable is going to go down. Very similar to a for-profit type of organization. We're going to say cash is going to go up. So let's start there. That's going to be the debit. That'll be on top. So we'll scroll back up top and we're going to pick up the cash. And then underneath the cash, we're going to have the tuition and fees receivable. That's going to be up top as well, close to the another asset up top, tuition and fees receivable. And then the amounts are going to be equal to that 5,160,000. That's going to be the debit and the credit. Okay, so there we have it. Let's go ahead and post this. We're going to go to cash up top. Going to scroll back up top and go to the cash account. And we are in Q3. Within Q3, I'm going to say F2 plus F2 and then scroll back down. And we're going to pick up that 5,160,000. And then next, we're going to have the tuition and fees receivable. So tuition and fees receivable. So we'll scroll back up top. Tuition and fees receivable is in Q5. So within Q5, I'm going to say F2 plus F2. Scroll back down. And we're going to pick up the tuition and fees receivable. That then should put us back in balance. Here's where we are at. Scrolling down, we have the green zeros. Looks like we're back in balance. That's good. And then we're going to scroll over to number 6 and ungreen number 6 as it has been now completed. And then green up number 7, the next one, which we will complete. Number 7 says that we have an unrestricted cash investment. So we're going to basically put money into an investment. We're going to take it out of cash. We're going to put it into an investment. Very similar to a for-profit type of organization that might do a similar type of transaction. Cash is going to be going down, so we know that cash is going to be a credit. Maybe we should start there. Let's do that. We're going to put cash on the bottom in cell F29 by saying equals. Scrolling up to the cash number up top, or the cash, not number really, that's the account. And then we're going to say the other side is going to go to investments. So we're going to take it out of cash. We're going to put it into another asset, which will be called investments. Then the amount is going to be equal to that green amount that we're on over here. That's why we made it green, to make it nice and easy, that 1,405,000. The debit and the credit will be one and the same in this transaction. So we have the investments up top. Let's go up top and post the investments. Up top, we see the investments. They're going to be in cell Q4. Something's in it, so we're going to go into it by saying F2 on the keyboard plus F2, and then scrolling down with the arrow key, going down, down, down. There we have it. And so investments should have then increased. And then the next one is going to be to cash. Cash is going to be up top. So let's go all the way up top to where the cash is. There's the cash up top, and we are in cell Q3. Something's in it. So we're going to say F2 plus F2. And then scroll back down to the cash. That's where the credit is, and enter. And there we go with that. Back in balance. Let's double check that. Do we have the green zeros? We do have green zeros. That's a good sign that we can move on to number 8. This will be the last one we do in this presentation. Then we'll do the next presentation. So we're going to wrap this one up this time with number 8. Let's green it up as we do so. Number 8 says that we purchased computer equipment. So that's going to be pretty straightforward. We're going to assume we purchased it with cash, by the way. That could be included in there. But we're going to say we purchased it with cash. So cash is going to go down. We're going to increase the asset of computer equipment. It's not an expense. It's going to be an asset. Computer equipment is something that we will be depreciated in a similar fashion as we would in a for-profit type of organization. I'll start off with cash because, again, cash is probably the first thing we should think about most of the time, even if we're pretty good with the transaction. So I'll do that best practice now. That's going to be the credit of the $18,550. The debit's going to be for the same amount, and we're just going to say that we purchased equipment for cash, straightforward transaction, no financing going on, which is nice. Equipment's going to be up top. We are not expensing it. We're going to put it into equipment, depreciable type of asset, and enter. So there is our transaction. Let's record this out. We're going to record the equipment first. So we're going to scroll over, goes back up top to the equipment account. We are then in cell Q8. So within Q8, we will say equals and scroll back down to the 18,550 and enter. So there, that has increased. Then we're going to scroll back down and we're going to pick up the cash. So cash, and let's go back up to the cash account. That is going to be in Q3. So within Q3, I'm going to say F2 plus F2, scroll back down, and we'll pick up the cash amount, that 18,550, and enter. So there we have that. That should hopefully put us back in balance. As we scroll down, we see that by the green zeros. That's where we will stop this time. We'll continue on next time.